This here is kind of an interesting location. I prepped this quite a few years ago. In fact, I need to redo it because some of these steps are about 3 inches long. But anyway, this is a spot where I'm not up in the tree that high, but I have a ton of background cover. Now, I've got the river right behind me. If you want to pan on the river, just down below me. And the deer cannot cross right there. So the deer, if they're following the edge of this river, they have to go down this runway, which is like 10 yards off the river. In fact, the cameraman is standing on it. So basically, this here has a river edge runway. Plus, if you pan to your right, just slowly pan, you'll see the autumn olive. And then it just goes into, this used to be a big stand of red pines and they've all fell over. They were 50 years old and they all fell over. And it's just briars. It's just thick, nasty briars in there now. So I'm right on the edge of it. And this location, I've got tons of background cover. I have no shot behind me because nothing's gonna be there because the water's there. So I only need an opening basically to this zone right in here, or where you're at. The cameraman is on a runway as well. So I've got spikes all the way around the tree so I can shoot any direction. Got a bow holder here. But most of my shots are gonna be right in this probably 120 degree zone. There has at times been scrapes under this autumn olive and some under that autumn olive right next to the river. And just a really cool spot. If I were a gun hunter, this would be a great spot because from up here, I'm overlooking that whole briar patch. Once the foliage is down, that's just a big open shot. And there's always a buck bedded in here. Again, rarely is there a buck I want to shoot here. 3 years in a row, there's been nothing here on this property worth shooting. But still, it's a great location. And this is just an example of you don't have to get as high if you got a lot of background cover. I shot a really nice buck, a 3-year-old buck out of a saddle when I was only 12 feet off the ground. And again, I was in a conifer tree. It was actually a cedar tree right on the edge of a cattail marsh. And the deer, I knew this buck was coming out of this very specific runway coming out in the evening. So I went in there and I prepped it post-season. Very first time I went in there and hunted it, I think it was late October, early November. It's quite a few years ago, and I was only 12 feet off the ground, and I only had a shot to that specific runway because that's the only runway coming out of the swamp in that spot. And it had rubs all the way out, so that was definitely his defined route. And I ended up shooting him, and again, he was 6 yards from the tree, and I was 12 feet off the ground. So I felt like I was on top of the deer. It had to be super quiet to get that shot off. But when you have this sort of background cover, you can get away with a lot of stuff. I still have spikes all the way around the tree so I can move around the tree in any direction. But great security cover, great little travel corridor because it's on an edge. It's on the edge of a brushy, swampy briar area in the river. Deer love traveling edges of waterways, rivers and creeks. Basically what they do is deer will come out of this bedding area, cross the river, and a buck can just come down here and scent check the edge of this bedding area along the river and scent check for anything that had crossed, before dark or, after daylight. Typically this is only an evening location and I have to cross the river. I can't come in from this side obviously because this is a bedding area. So I have to cross the river with waders, and then I'll put the waders, I'll ditch them and put on my hunting boots, and then I'll just slide down the edge of the river here, trying to be as quiet as I can. I'll usually pick a windy day to do this, so it masks my noise. And I'll come right to this tree and get in this tree, and then when I leave, I go back across the river with my waders. So it's a very specific evening location. It has to be entered with waders. If you come in from this direction, you're gonna spook deer. I don't care how you do it, you're gonna spook deer. So awesome location, especially if there were big bucks around here. Okay, this is my canoe that I use for deer hunting. It's a Radisson 15-foot square stern, made out of aircraft aluminum, weighs 42 pounds. Very easy for me to handle because I'm typically hunting by myself. I've used this to access several islands, across lakes, had a couple deer in it, bringing them out. And it's really kind of cool because it's got a foam liner on the inside, relatively long, so I can put a pretty big load in here. Also comes with oar locks, which is really unique because it's a lot easier oaring across the lake than it is paddling, where you got to switch sides all the time. So it's 42 pounds, very easy to handle, has a square stern. I also have an electric motor, as well as a 3 horsepower outboard that I use on this. But typically I'm using oars. These things work great. I keep it in my garage up in the rafters so it doesn't take up any space on the ground.